James Quincy is the president of Coca-Cola Europe. What good does Coca-Cola do you physically?
I think Coca-Cola, as the introduction said, does have some sugar in it. It is energy. Is it an absolute necessity? No, it's not. Millions of people enjoy it as part of their diet across the UK.
Does have some sugar in it, you say?
It does.
Why don't you say specifically how much sugar there is in this can, for example?
I think if you turn...
On the side you say 30, you have a percentage on there, don't you?
Yes, right here on the front, it quite clearly calls out the amount of sugar in this can of Coke.
And what does it say?
35 grams, which is 6 teaspoons of sugar, which is, you know, about the same amount of calories as a cappuccino or half a croissant. So there is calories. And actually, what we're doing is to say, look, the information is here. We want to actually promote and make sure people
do. You imagine people know if they go to the cinema, and this is a small one, and there are big ones here too. You go to the cinema and you get a jug of Coke like this. Do you think people have any idea how much sugar's in it?
And maybe they don't. And I think one of the things we need to do...
Look at this. 23 sachets of sugar in that single container, the equivalent thereof. Now, that is a staggering amount of sugar, isn't it?
That is why we're very focused, as one of the things we're doing, on getting the information out there. We're not trying to hide the information behind what's in a Coca-Cola Classic.
To hide it.
But there's zero sugar in a Coke Zero.
Well, clearly, it's called a Coke Zero. But the Coke Classic, look at this one here. There's 44 packets of sugar in this one. 44!
Indeed there are, and I think what we're saying is, look, we want to make sure that people have the information available to them so that they can make the choices, and if they don't want the big one, then fine, and that clearly is not one that's going to be for everyone. We want to make sure the information is available. We want to make sure there's more availability of more choices, whether it's smaller packages, as you had in your intro.
Yeah, but whether it's 23 in something this size, or 44 in something this size, each of which is to be consumed in one single sitting at a cinema, this is staggering, isn't it?
We have an awful
food is that when you process food, when you freeze it and dehydrate it, you destroy most of its flavor. And one of the most mind-blowing things for me as I was doing this research was coming upon a flavor industry that has arisen to manufacture the taste, not just of most of the fast food that we eat, but most of the processed food that you'll buy at supermarkets today. Now, one of the chapters in my book set out to discover why McDonald's French fries taste so good. And they really do. I mean, they have a very distinctive flavor that's different from just about all the other fries that the chains sell. And the reason is this one ingredient at the back of the very end of the list of ingredients, you'll see this phrase, natural flavor. And it is a natural flavor. I had to really try and figure out where it comes from. And it turns out it comes from animal products and from beef. There's all kinds of strange things that are being added to our fast food that most people don't realize. Chicken McNuggets derive much of their flavor from beef and from beef extracts.
Hey, I'm gonna show y'all something, man. This shit crazy, right? You know how y'all be going to McDonald's and Wendy's and shit, eating chicken nuggets and chicken sandwiches? Well, I'm gonna show you how they make this shit. Alright. Mechanically separated chicken. Now watch this. This is chicken nuggets and chicken sandwiches and shit, man. That's what they make that shit with. Y'all please share this shit, man. This shit is unhealthy as fuck, man.
Today we're going to take a closer look at what's in your McDonald's food. I'm standing in the parking lot of a McDonald's restaurant in Austin, Texas. And we're going to order some chicken McNuggets and a Big Mac and put it under a high-powered microscope to take a really close look at what's in your food.
I'll take some chicken McNuggets and a Big Mac. And is that the only size McNuggets you have?
We got the 20.
Oh no, I don't think I can handle 20.
Well, that's the biggest.
I guess 10 is enough.
Alright, we made it home and now we're going to check out the Chicken McNuggets with some safety gloves. These are the nuggets right here. You've seen these before because there are only 3 basic shapes. That right there is kind of scary. But now we're going to put them under the high-powered digital microscope and check out what's really inside Chicken McNuggets. We began our investigation by looking at the surface of the Chicken McNuggets, then zooming in to get more detail. At high magnification, we began to notice mysterious fibers across the surface, as well as some unusual color, such as this red color, which appears to be some sort of food coloring agent. We decided to dig deeper by opening the Chicken McNugget to find out what was inside. There, we began to see shapes reminiscent of an alien landscape. Nothing resembled chicken in my mind. Watch as we zoom in on this image. I've never seen chicken look transparent. With the help of the high-tech digital microscope at the Natural News Forensic Food Labs, we were able to alter the plane of observation even at high magnification, so we can see the texture of this Chicken McNugget landscape. The more we looked, the more seemingly strange things we began to discover across these Chicken McNuggets, including strange blue objects with fibers. We also found dark-looking splotches and weird shapes that raised questions. But by far the strangest things we found were unexplained fibers that appear to resemble hairs. All the hair-like fibers we found seem to be embedded in the mass of the McNugget. Here's another one with odd endings. And here's a third found next to some mysterious red coloring. These fibers intrigued me so much that I attempted to remove one of them. This is me using a pair of fine tweezers to try to remove this one embedded hair-like fiber. Here are some of the other scenes of what we found inside the Chicken McNuggets. We also located a green spherical object that actually looks like algae. Nowhere did we find anything that really looked like chicken. Here's what chicken looks like. We acquired this at a local Mexican restaurant that used real chicken, not processed chicken. Back to the Chicken McNugget. My advice is to look more closely at what you eat before you eat it, and ask questions about where your food really comes from and what's in it. You may be shocked to find you're eating far more than you bargained for.
Awful reality right now. America, you're at the top of your game. This is one of the most unhealthy countries in the world. Can I please just see a raise of hands for how many of you have children in this room today? Please put your hands up. Aunties, uncles, you can continue to put your hands up. Aunties and uncles as well? Most of you. Okay. We, the adults of the last 4 generations, have blessed our children with the destiny of a shorter lifespan than their own parents. Your child will live a life 10 years younger than you because of the landscape of food that we've built around them. 2/3 of this room today in America are statistically overweight or obese. You lot, you're all right, but we'll get you eventually, don't worry. Right? The statistics of bad health are clear, very clear. We spend our lives being paranoid about death, murder, homicide, you name it. It's on the front page of every paper, CNN. Look at homicide at the bottom, for God's sake. Right? Every single one of those ones in the red is a diet-related disease. Any doctor, any specialist will tell you that. Fact. Diet-related disease is the biggest killer in the United States right now, here today. This is a global problem. It's a catastrophe. It's sweeping the world. England is right behind you, as usual. I know they were close, but not that close. We need a revolution. Mexico, Australia, Germany, India, China, all have massive problems with obesity and bad health. I want to talk about something so basic as milk. Every kid has the right to milk at school. Your kids will be having milk at school, breakfast and lunch, right? They'll be having 2 bottles, okay? And most kids do. But milk ain't good enough anymore because someone at the milk board, right, and don't get me wrong, I support milk, but someone at the milk board probably paid a lot of money for some geezer to work out that if you put loads of flavourings and colourings and sugar in milk, right, more kids will drink it. Yeah. And obviously, you know, now that's going to catch on. The Apple board is going to work out that if they make toffee apples, they'll eat more apples as well. Do you know what I mean? For me, there ain't no need to flavour the milk, okay? There's sugar in everything. I know the ins and outs of those ingredients. It's in everything. Even the milk hasn't escaped the kind of modern-day problems. There's our milk, there's our carton. In that is nearly as much sugar as one of your favourite cans of fizzy pop, and they're having 2 a day. So, let me just show you. We've got one kid here having, you know, 8 tablespoons of sugar a day. You know, there's your week. There's your month. And I've took the liberty of putting in just the 5 years of elementary school sugar just from milk. Now, I don't know about you guys, but judging the circumstances, right, any judge in the whole world would look at the statistics and the evidence, and they would find any government of old guilty of child abuse. That's my belief.
But one of the real problems that we're facing today is obesity among children, and the way the fast food chains are marketing these same high-fat foods to children. And to me, that's a very, very different subject entirely. The obesity rate among American children has doubled since the late 1970s. And we have the highest obesity rate among children in the Western industrialized world. There are children now who are suffering from early onset diabetes in large numbers. There are children who are 6 to 8 years old who are having heart attacks because of their obesity. The fast food chains, from the very early days, have worked hard to market their goods to kids. Ray Kroc, again, really pioneered this. And it wasn't because he loved kids. It was because he realized, and he's quite open in his memoir about this, that if you can get a child to come to your restaurant, you'll also get 1, 2 of their parents, grandparents. And the industry's own surveys now show that whenever a child sets foot in a fast food restaurant, the average check size is much higher just because that child is bringing in other customers.
Hello, my name is Burke Bear, and I'm 11 years old. I came here today to talk about what's wrong with our food system. First of all, I would like to say that I'm really amazed at how easily kids are led to believe all the marketing and advertising on TV, at public schools, and pretty much everywhere else you look. It seems to me like corporations are always trying to get kids, like me, to get their parents to buy stuff that really isn't good for us or the planet. Little kids especially are attracted by colorful packaging and plastic toys. I must admit, I used to be one of them. I also used to think that all of our food came from these happy little farms where pigs rolled in mud and cows grazed on grass all day. What I discovered was this is not true. I began to look into this stuff on the internet, in books, and in documentary films, in my travels with my family. I discovered the dark side of the industrialized food system. First, there's genetically engineered seeds and organisms. That is when a seed is manipulated in a laboratory to do something not intended by nature, like taking the DNA of a fish and putting it into the DNA of a tomato. Yuck. Don't get me wrong. I like fish and tomatoes, but this is just creepy. The seeds are then planted, then grown. The food they produce have been proven to cause cancer and other problems in lab animals. And people have been eating food produced this way since the 1990s, and most folks don't even know they exist. Did you know rats that genetically engineered corn had developed signs of liver and kidney toxicity? These include kidney inflammation and lesions and decreased kidney weight. Yet almost all the corn we eat has been altered genetically in some way. And let me tell you, corn isn't everything. And don't even get me started on the confined animal feeding operations called CAFOs. Conventional farmers use chemical fertilizers made from fossil fuels that they mix with the dirt to make plants grow. They do this because they've stripped the soil from all nutrients from growing the same crop over and over again. Next, more harmful chemicals are sprayed on fruits and vegetables, like pesticides and herbicides, to kill weeds and bugs. When it rains, these chemicals seep into the ground or run off into our waterways, poisoning our water too. Then they irradiate our food, trying to make it last longer, so it can travel thousands of miles from where it's grown to the supermarkets. So I ask myself, how can I change? How can I change these things? This is what I found out. I discovered that there's a movement for a better way. Now, a while back, I wanted to be an NFL football player. I decided that I'd rather be an organic farmer instead. That way... Thank you. And that way, I can have a greater impact on the world. I learned about this guy named Joel Salatin. They call him a lunatic farmer because he grows against the system. Since I'm homeschooled, I went to go hear him speak one day. This man, this lunatic farmer, doesn't use any pesticides, herbicides, or genetically modified seeds. And so for that, he's called crazy by the system. I want you to know that we can all make a difference by making different choices, by buying our food directly from local farmers or neighbors who we know in real life. Some people say organic or local food is more expensive, but is it really? With all these things I've been learning about the food system, it seems to me that we can either pay the farmer or we can pay the hospital. I
know. Food, junk food now, they know. They have proven. Junk food is addictive, and the more junk food you eat, the less inclined you are to eat healthy food. Any restaurant that you recognize the name, don't eat there. And I'm sorry for the people that have the McDonald's wakala in this country. I'm against fast food. Muslims have their own fast food, you know, like falafel and shawarma. We have our own fast foods. And you have the fast foods in Malay. Eat your own foods. Eat healthy food. Don't eat this junk food. This food is made in factories by chemists to get you addicted. They use rats and they see how much sugar and fat they need to put in. Just like tobacco. People get addicted to it. They can't stop. So avoid any of these restaurants. Look at these poor children. It's a crime against our children to feed them this.
My friends, the information that you are about to witness from all of my years of research is the most important. It's been hidden in plain view the entire time. This is the ultimate secret, and it's about to be exposed. I have hundreds of government documents, textbooks, white papers, where for over 80 years, the elite of the Western world have talked about adulterating food and water to sicken and sterilize the population for the purpose of eugenics. It's all covered in the book Eco Science, written by the White House science czar John P. Holdren, where they talk about a planetary police state to carry out the forced sterilization. They also talk about covert systems in the water and food to sterilize the population. Now, this was written decades ago before he was White House science czar. Now suddenly the stuff in this book is all over the news. They're selling it to the public as if it's a good thing. You see here before you what an average person would buy when they went shopping at the store. Not everything here is bad for you, but much of it has compounds and artificial chemicals that have been added that are extremely toxic and bad for your health. And they have known this the entire time, and they have approved them for use. Let's start with aspartame. You cannot go to the grocery store now and buy any type of even regular sugar gum that hasn't had aspartame added to it. In the 1970s, Searle tried to get it approved, and they couldn't. It took them 3 separate times because in their own studies with monkeys, large portions of them that were fed it died and contracted cancer. Now we have mainstream news articles, and the EU has done a major study finding lower birth weights, early birth, and yes, miscarriages from women that drink aspartame-laden soft drinks like Coke Zero. What is aspartame? It is the fecal matter of the E. coli bacteria. They took it and genetically engineered it. They can feed it toxic waste, and then it defecates aspartame. And it has so many bad health effects, it's just unspeakable. This is being done by design. It's also very, very addictive. But let's just go ahead and move away from aspartame and talk about McDonald's and chicken McNuggets. Now, I remember a decade ago or so reading health advisories claiming that a form of plastic that's used in silly putty, basically a type of silicone, was in the chicken McNuggets, but also in many other TV dinners and other foods. It is illegal in every other nation in the world to add these chemicals to the food, but it's not in the United States. The big secret is all of this was done by design by the FDA. Look at all the drugs they've approved, and then it comes out later that they knowingly approve them when these drugs are causing heart attacks and cancer. In the Nuremberg trials, it came out that the Nazis were adding sodium fluoride to the water supply in the labor camps and death camps to make the population more docile and controllable. There had been hundreds of university studies before Hitler even came to power. This is a form of forced medication. They admit that 1 part per million of sodium fluoride more than doubles the chance of bone cancer in boys and men. As the public became educated in the last few decades, the government and industry's response was to not just put it in water, but to start adding it to thousands of products like children's water that's mixed with their formula or with their cereal. They started adding as much as 900 parts per million in things like powdered eggs. It causes reductions in IQ. It increases sterility or lack of fertility. And it's being added to so many of the daily staples that we consume. We'll get back to food additives in a moment. But first, I wanted to look at genetically modified organisms. Did you know for many years the American people have been eating cloned beef and pork, and now they're expanding out into other forms of meat? Let's look at salmon first. Major university studies conclusively have proven that the type of genetically modified salmon that is actually a cross species, they've mixed other animal genes in with it, that when this fish is introduced with wild natural salmon, within 40 generations, all of the natural salmon are extinct. And the FDA approved this. And they're going to allow it to be released into the wild that isn't even a salmon. It is a cross-species chimera. It is a mixture like something out of the island of Dr. Moreau, something out of a nightmare. More than 85% of the corn now consumed in the United States, and it's also starting to trend that way in Europe and Canada, is genetically engineered. It grows its own pesticide within the corn kernels so that insects won't eat it. If the insects can't eat this and live, what do you think is going to happen when lab rats or humans eat it? We have literally hundreds of studies showing that not just Monsanto's, but other major GMO companies' corn, that's the majority of corn we're now eating today in the United States, has been linked to organ failure in lab animals. The studies also show massive increases in sterility in rats and guinea pigs that are fed not just GMO corn, but GMO cotton seeds. Studies in India, Germany, and the United States have conclusively shown that when they feed the cotton seeds left over from the cotton crop from these genetically modified varieties, that the cows are having miscarriages, they are having low birth weights, or in many cases, they're simply dying. And what is in most processed foods? Genetically modified cottonseed oil. Major studies are also showing that genetically engineered crops are killing honeybees and monarch butterflies. But they don't stop there. Now they claim they're coming out with a genetically engineered mosquito that's malaria-proof that they're going to release into the open biosphere. The very genetic code of the planet is being butchered in a hostile corporate takeover. Many years ago, an executive from Monsanto was quoted in National Geographic as saying that that is their program, that they want to basically have their crops and their organisms take over the entire biosphere of this planet. And the major genetic engineer companies have focused mainly on 8 major food crops. Now they're expanding out into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other plants, literally changing the genetic code of the planet. This is a genetic dictatorship. This is genetic vandalism. And that's why the Rockefellers, the United Nations, and others have built these giant armored seed vaults all over the world, not just at the Arctic Circle. And they admit they're doing it in case all of this gets out of hand, that they'll have a type of Noah's Ark. So all these fake environmental groups, they never complain about this. They never talk about true environmental degradation. They want to put a tax on carbon dioxide that humans exhale, that plants respirate from and carry out photosynthesis with, as a way to shut down industrial society and control every facet of our lives. That's the big secret. This is a population reduction program. It is an epidemic. The sperm count has dropped in the Western world exponentially. Even the government has been predicting within another generation, almost everyone is going to be sterile. This is the globalist religion. This is their philosophy. They want the planet for themselves. The UN has said that their stated plan is an 80% population reduction. You've heard Ted Turner call us useless eaters and feeders and say that 80% of us need to be killed. You've heard Prince Philip say he wants to come back as a virus to kill the majority of the world population. Dr. Eric Pianka, Peter Singer, it's all over the news where they tell us that we should only have one child because more than one is bad for the environment and that the recession is good for lowering our carbon footprint. This is the big secret. We live in a scientific dictatorship, and the United States and England are the epicenter of this, and it's expanding worldwide. Remember all the secret testing, all the secret sterilization that went on in the United States and Europe. Remember what Hitler did. He learned all of that from the eugenicist and the Rockefeller family in the United States. This is a culture of death being pushed on you and your family. And even if you think the world is overpopulated, you need to understand that you're being targeted by this as well. Targeted by design. Recombinant bovine growth hormone in your milk, making 8-year-old girls go into puberty when they should be going into puberty at 12 or 13. Silicone in chicken McNuggets and hundreds of other processed foods. Aspartame, that is the feces of genetically engineered bacteria that has incredible health problems that have been proven. Think for yourself. It goes on and on. ABC News, this goes back 4 years ago. Viral meat spray, advancing food safety. They spray a live virus on the meat to supposedly kill the bacteria. This is a live vaccine they spray on most of the meat you're consuming that you're buying from the store. It gets even worse. The petroleum distillates, or toxic waste that's left over from petroleum refineries that refine oil into gasoline, they take these tens of millions of pounds of toxic waste that's left over, the fluoride, the mercury, the lead, and they dump it on crops as supposed fertilizer. And what do crops like tomatoes and corn and potatoes do? They pull in all of those toxins out of the ground. In fact, scientists for many years have used plants to actually detoxify areas that have been contaminated. And those plants are pulling all of this up, and then you are eating it. That's why the Washington Post reported in January of 2008 that a major study found that nearly a third of the 55 popular brand name foods and beverage products were filled with mercury. Despite the fact that the people of Europe for over 20 years have fought off all the genetically modified wheat and corn and other crops being planted in their nation, now the EU is buckled and is accepting it. The United States is literally a testing ground for all of this. It's just automatically approved. And the people that work for these corporations, they're compartmentalized. They don't know what's going on. The people that work at these stores, they have no idea what's happening. This is affecting all of us. This is hurting everyone. Many different forms of cancer are growing by thousands of percentage points. Diabetes, all these different diseases. And in major studies, it's all been linked to the toxic additives that are in our food, our water. And I haven't even had time to get into MSG. I mean, I've interviewed brain surgeons, neurologists, scientists. I mean, it just devastates the brain. It's an excitotoxin. It destroys the liver, and it is in tens of thousands of products. We can say no. We can stand up. But if you've got a neighbor giving fluoride water to their baby, please go over and warn them. If you got a neighbor that's sitting there eating MSG-filled chips, one after the other, warn them. You've got a responsibility. If you know people that are feeding processed foods filled with GMO, warn them. And for God's sakes, don't give it to your own children. If you want to kill yourself, that's your own business. But don't hurt your children. Don't do this, ladies and gentlemen. In closing, I want to talk about some positive things. Just 15 years ago or so, you couldn't find organic food anywhere on store shelves. And now, about half of what you see is organic. Just a few years ago, all the milk had the growth hormone in it. Now it's hard to find milk that has the growth hormone in it because the consumers have spoken and said no. A few years ago, you couldn't find toothpaste that didn't have sodium fluoride in it. Now Tom's of Maine is starting to take over the aisle space and displace the other mainline toothpaste makers, where it says on the back, if you swallow this, call poison control immediately. Even Colgate is now putting out fluoride-free toothpaste. People are demanding that they not be poisoned, and they're finding out about what's going on. And so industry is starting to respond and at least give people who want a choice an option to not be forcibly medicated through the food and the water. You know cigarettes are bad for you. But just 20 years ago, the cigarette makers were getting up before Congress and saying it was a conspiracy theory that it was killing people. And then later it came out in their internal documents, they knew it was deadly. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen the studies. Much of what they're putting in our food and water is far worse than even cigarettes, as bad as they are, one of the biggest killers in this country. This is a covert, soft kill operation. We'll put a lot of links beneath this video so you can check out the facts for yourself. And I'm just begging you to do your own research and find out that one of the most dangerous places in the world is your grocery store and the tap water in your house.